there are criticisms of my Who Really Won breakdown between Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski, which I always welcome, but I do have to defend against it when things are not true. When things are true, you do see me correct it, like the Conor McGregor Nate Diaz one I did, or I mentioned about Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, how I was definitely wrong with the push kicks and stuff like that. When it comes to the MMA Gurus video, there are a couple things I can agree with. For an example, like a couple body shots landing that I missed, and maybe some light to medium switch ups. I'm fine with agreeing with some of those as well. And this is nothing against MMA Guru, but you did make a criticism of my breakdown. I'm going to have to defend the points that I think you were wrong in. And I do accept a couple of the points that you mentioned that I do agree with now. So you mentioned 7 strikes that I apparently missed. 2 out of those 7 strikes I definitely missed. 4 of them I definitely think you're wrong in. Some of those strikes are very obvious that they do not land, and one of them is arguable. There are 2 strikes that, when I saw it, it did look to me like they didn't actually land, but now that I'm seeing those 2 body shots that people were talking about do actually land. So that was something I was wrong about in my breakdown, but it really didn't matter when it came to the actual scoring. These are smaller things to look at. They don't change the scoring of the fight at all, because for the second round, it still goes to Volkanovski regardless, and all these arguments are only for Volk, none of them is for Islam. And for the third round, most of the stuff brought up does not change who won the round in my opinion, as the elbow is still the most damaging shot of that round. Whereas the rest of it is very close, it's very even. The major stuff that Guru was trying to point out is a difference between some light and medium attacks. Like, this is not entirely important. I can agree maybe. It's honestly just like grasping at straws, and when there's arguably even some strikes I gave him that people will disagree with. For example, a big argument right now is the knockdown in the second round, which I still give to Volkanovski. And like I mentioned, man, if I'm wrong about something, I'm always glad to admit it, because it makes me see the fights better, right? This is not the first time I missed something. I mean, heck, I deleted a whole Who Really Won video because I was wrong on it, and I redid it. But this is not one of those cases. There are a few things here that, yes, I can agree with, but ultimately it doesn't change the results. Everything he talked about besides one strike really does not sway the results at all. They're very minor. Just one of the things he talked about can be an argument for Volkanovski to win the third round, but I do ultimately disagree with it. And I disagree with most of the things he talked about besides like a couple things. The categories of light, medium, and heavy are pretty wide in range. The impact of every single strike are different. None of them are the same, and I'm categorizing them inside of 3. So they're going to be a bit different, which is why Islam rocking Volkanovski with a left hand is a heavy, right? But there's going to be other heavy strikes that aren't going to rock Volkanovski. You don't have to rock him in order to make it a heavy strike. That is the highest category of all of it, right? If I want to get very specific, like a lighter version of heavy to a medium version to a heavier version of heavy, things will be understood a lot better in my opinion. But for the general audience, I think it's just a bit too much. So I make it as simple as possible. But the biggest disagreements seem to be about the knee in the second round for some odd reason, and in the third round, it's the winded up right hook that is being argued to be the biggest strike of the third round, that possibly given it to Volkanovski. Straight away, the knee just doesn't land. I mean, I don't know why Guru even brought this one up. The knee just clearly goes past his head. This does not land, but through the power of editing, you can definitely make it look like it landed when you freeze frame it here, which is what he did. If I froze it right here, you would have thought that this landed on Volkanovski when it did not. So I don't know why Guru actually did that. But when you see the whole knee and the follow through, this shot never lands. And I don't know why he was on it for so long. This was definitely not a point to go to. And there's other strikes that he did the same thing for. The hook was much more important, right? This knee was irrelevant to talk about. Number 1, it's wrong. And number 2, it had no impact of the scoring at all. And after I talk about the hook, I'll go into all the other minor details he was talking about, some strikes here and there. But I specifically want to talk about this hook more than anything else because I believe it's the best thing he brought up. The major issue that Guru's having with this is he's not looking at the reaction as much as the form of a punch. He's making a big mistake of thinking that because I swing such a big hook, it's going to cause damage, right? It has to cause damage. But if I throw in an elbow that you run into, it shouldn't have as much damage. That's all speculative. If we see someone throw a big punch like that, we think it's going to be damaging. But if the reaction of the opponent does not show that kind of impact, for example, that big right hook he's talking about does not really phase Islam much at all. If you want to count it as a medium, I'm fine with that. Regardless, it doesn't really change anything. I'm fine with light or medium. It doesn't really matter. But it's certainly not as damaging as the elbow that Islam lands on Volkanovski, which, mind you, not only showed better impact, a bigger reaction, which is the only thing we really go by, and another part of the reaction is it opened a cut. You can see him wipe at his forehead, and like 20 to 30 seconds later, you can see it's already leaking, and according to the judging criteria, cuts like this are a factor. That is ultimately the reason why I would have to push it from a medium to a heavy. That, in my opinion, is not debatable. It'd be really hard to argue against that. If that right hook had the similar kind of impact, right, it knocked Islam's head back and stuff like that, then I can agree with you, but it just didn't. So those are the major two things he was talking about. The knee was completely irrelevant, and the hook, although I can like meet him for the medium strike, I disagree with him saying that it was the biggest strike of that round, because reaction is the only thing you can go by. If a fighter swings a big hook, winds it up, cracks the opponent, but the opponent is able to take the punch, but if you're able to jab the opponent and they drop, which one is the more damaging strike? It's the jab. Even though it's not as big of a punch, it's still the more damaging punch. And a good example of that is the Hamza Chimaev and Gilbert Burns fight. The biggest punch of the whole fight, with all the haymakers thrown, was a jab from Hamza. And that's the biggest issue Guru is having with understanding this hook compared to the elbow. Now we can get into the other strikes he was talking about. And the only reason why he was bringing any of this up was saying that like I was purposely not showing this, purposely lying and stuff like that because I'm super biased. And when no, man, if I miss some of these, I just missed it. None of it's on purpose. I make these videos very quickly right after the fight. So there are times I may miss a strike here and there, but I never miss the biggest strikes. I never miss the meaningful stuff. I'll miss like 1 or 2 strikes in a fight sometimes. It doesn't usually happen because I believe even Guru can attest. He agrees with most of my Who Really Won videos, right? He was the same guy that was really taking the side of Volkanovski versus Holloway in that second one where everybody thought Holloway was robbed. I was going through the same exact thing. But here are some of the strikes that Guru is saying that I missed. So the first strike was the knee. The second strike, Volkanovski landed 2 punches instead of 1. This is the punch that he didn't show. As you can see, the punch misses. It looks like the glove may have just like skid past his hair. If you want to say that's a shot landing, I mean, I usually don't count stuff like that, but whatever. Apparently, Volkanovski landed a right straight to the body. No, this is not even close. Not only did it get blocked by the elbow, as you can clearly see, it doesn't reach to the body. Again, this is just reaching. I can go frame by frame and you can see the full extension. You can see how it gets blocked by the elbow, everything like that. The punch just does not land. So apparently this punch lands on Islam when you can clearly see that the punch gets blocked, deflects off, and never connects on Islam. They're trying to disingenuously freeze the frame right here, saying that, look, it lands on the chin, without showing the full thing. And lastly, this one could be kind of debatable. Now the argument against this is that Volk is throwing a left hook that connects on Islam over the shoulder, when in fact, if you look at the way Volkanovski throws the punch, from the way it's cocked back to the rotation moving forward and the extension with a locked elbow, this is not the hook that he thinks it is. This is more of a straight punch than a hook. Yes, he arcs it a little bit at the end as he's drawn his punch back. But if you want to say this is a punch that lands after the full extension of his punch, for the fact that his hand just touches Islam's head, fine, I guess. But that's really reaching, man. So those were all the strikes that he said I apparently missed. 2 out of the 6, I admit I was wrong, but 4 of them clearly were incorrect. And now the rest of it is like trying to say some are light, some are medium, stuff like that. I can agree with almost most of this. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't change much. This is not a big point of contention. I go through this all the time when people want to disagree with light and medium and stuff like that. If it's not that important and I can see where they're coming from, I will agree with that, just like here. But I will disagree with some of Guru's descriptions here. It seemed like he had an issue with me calling this body hook a slap punch, when in fact, it is a slap punch. It hits with the palm side of the fist. It's not digging into the body the way he made it seem like it was. He hits the side of Islam's body. You can see the front knuckles right there of his fist, but Guru instead throws it in another way, which made him think that it was like a different kind of punch. And no, this is not a big shot. Islam showed no reaction to it. He's not digging into the body with it and all that stuff. There's nothing that really shows you here that it's a big punch. The next thing is about this check right hook. It's a very short punch, and I will agree that the punch actually doesn't look like it's powerful. And I can also agree that Volkanovski throwing a left overhand may have more to contribute with him kind of stumbling forward, making this more of a light attack than a medium. I can agree with that. It's just that the punch landing and seeing Volkanovski's reaction, it can definitely make one think that this is a bigger shot than just a light. But him with the forward momentum, throwing a left overhand, I could definitely agree with the light attack instead of a medium. But I do disagree with Guru when he says that a punch like this can't hurt you, right? We've seen many punches throughout the years that don't look like they'll hurt somebody, and they do. Then we go to 1 minute and 30 seconds of the second round. And the argument against this is that this left hand should not have been scored a medium, it should have been scored a light. So the shot, as you can see, is a left hand that lands on Volkanovski, it turns his head, and Volkanovski immediately after the blow retreats. And I think people who are disagreeing with me here are thinking that medium are some kind of shots that stumble and rock the opponent and stuff like that. No, a medium strike is not something is going to cause a fighter to be like rocked all over the place and stuff. No, that's what heavies are for. The reaction that Volkanovski gives from the punch is not one that a light strike would get out of. This is a little bit more, right? Your head turns and then you immediately retreat from the blow, or just the onslaught from Makhachev, whatever it is. We can just only look at the reaction from the shot. We can speculate that it's more to it than all that stuff. But the biggest disagreement people have with this is they said that there's no way this punch could have landed with that much power, when that is just crazy in my opinion, for the fact that Islam's number one's a big guy, right? He has a lot of momentum going forward because he threw a flying knee before this that got blocked, and then Volkanovski went to counter immediately afterward, but got hit down the center by that left hand. All of this momentum is moving forward at Volkanovski. Because it's an ugly punch does not mean it's not going to generate power, right? Ugly punches generate power all the time, In the same sequence as Volkanovski's moving away from Islam Makhachev, he does land a right hook on Islam. The punch is nice, it does look like it should be somewhat damaging, right? I have to look at the reaction from the blows. Just because something looks like it's going to be powerful does not mean it is. Just like vice versa, sometimes punches don't look like they're going to be powerful, but they are as well. Through the power of editing that I have already seen, you can freeze the frame right here and show nothing more, and it looks like Volkanovski just like hurt Islam. But when you look at the entire punch and the follow-up from Islam, he literally just tanks the punch and keeps going. It doesn't do anything to him. This is another shot I would say would be on the heavier side of light or a lighter side of medium. And then the follow-up punch from Islam Makhachev is another disagreement a few people have, and they're trying to say that this punch should not have been scored a heavy. I scored this one a heavy because it didn't rock Volkanovski, right? It didn't leave him stumbling all over the cage like that one pullback left-handed. But here's the thing, it's a broad spectrum. Not every single punch has to have the same exact kind of damage in order to be categorized under one of these, right? If you want to make this one a medium, I don't mind. It really doesn't change anything, right? The reason why I scored it a heavy is because it has more of an impact or a reaction than all the other medium attacks that Islam landed. From the punch, you could definitely see the blowback of the shot, right? You can see right here how it lands. Islam is throwing a left hook around the side. Look at Volkanovski's head straight up. It connects, forces his head the other way, so people saying that there's no way this punch landed are just being disingenuous at that point. Look at the blowback from the punch, man. Islam has to cover up right after the blow. These reactions Volkanovski gave after the punch are reasons why I scored it as a heavy. And then we move to 1 minute and 25 seconds of the second round, and Volkanovski is throwing a left hook after taking a right uppercut from Islam. And just like Islam landed the right uppercut and didn't really get much out of it, right? There's not really a reaction from Volkanovski that it was damaging. That's why I scored it a light. Volkanovski throws a left hook, and pretty much the same thing happens. People are trying to say that this punch should have been more than it was. It should have been more than a light. And they freeze a frame right here through the power of editing. But if you look at this punch in real time, there is really nothing on it. Islam takes the punch and just keeps going. If you want to make this a medium and argue that it's on the lighter side of medium, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter, doesn't change anything. It's just kind of grasping at straws at that point. But to say like this is a heavy or a big shot or something like that is quite insane. Now there's this right body hook right here, so we both agree that the punch lands, right? It connects, we count it for something. The only difference is that Guru is saying this is more than just a light attack. The only way I can agree with that is if it showed some kind of signs of it. The only signs it probably showed was contributing to Islam slowing down in the later rounds. But is that the immediate body hook or a cumulative of body shots? it's a different kind of argument to make. Islam didn't have much of a reaction to the punch, so it can absolutely be argued for a light attack. But I can give leeway for this body hook. If you want to say it's a medium, I'm fine with that. If you want to say it's a light, I'm fine with that. Really doesn't make much of a difference. And then we move to 53 seconds of the third round, and people are saying, how is this a medium attack, right? This should be a light attack. And this is another shot which was kind of in the mix there. It could be a light, it could be a medium. I ultimately went with medium because it did have a different kind of impact when the punch initially lands. Again, I could freeze the frame right here and make it look like it was much more damaging than it was. But this right hook shoots Volkanovski's head to the side, man. This is not a shot that he just like tanked. But he does go right after Islam Makhachev. This is a big reason why I did not make this a heavy attack or something like that. Because Volkanovski ultimately did take the punch well. And he went right after Islam. But as you can see from the hook, like this is not a regular reaction from a light attack. The punch that Volkanovski lands on Islam Makhachev was a light. Volkanovski landed a jab. Look at the reaction from that jab. That's a light attack. That is not. That's more than just a light attack. That's why I made it a medium. And then we go to 33 seconds of the third round, and Volkanovski shooting down at him. Islam counters him with what he tried to land, a check right hook. And the big disagreement that Guru has here is, he says that the fist doesn't land, therefore the strike doesn't really count. Or if it does, it's not damaging. But he clearly lands with the forearm behind the head. You don't have to land with your fist in order to damage your opponent with a thrown punch. For an example, if you were to swing full power, a right hook at somebody, and you hit them with your forearm instead of your fist, now all of a sudden it's not a good strike, now all of a sudden it's not damaging, you could still put someone's lights out with that, especially behind the head. And you could see from the punch right here, look at the reaction from Volkanovski. Head goes downward from the blow, hits him in the back of the head, which is going to force him forward and downward, and he's catching himself from all the momentum moving forward. Because of this, I made it a medium attack. Oh, but after reviewing the video to see if I did miss anything, I did notice that the back of the head shot here, I did count as a light and medium attack on accident. I was kind of debating with myself if it was light or medium. At first, I made it light, and then I switched it to medium, but just forgot to revert it back. It really doesn't change anything. Now, another thing some people are saying is, Volkanovski was actually going for an outside trip during this. This is not the technique for that. This is not that outside step sweep that you see fighters get on people. The reason why it isn't is because, number one, Volkanovski was stepping on the outside to catch his footing, not to trip out Islam. And number two, when you want to get a sweep like this, you usually throw your arm backwards into the opponent to throw them over your leg, tripping them out. That's what they do. Volkanovski did not do that. He literally just runs into Islam. This is not the technique for a sweep, which I'm pretty sure Volkanovski knows how to do. Some people try to say that this is a good punch from Volkanovski, lands to the ribs, like really good shot, when it lands to the lats on the armpit area. And the reason why you could definitely say that is because he's attacking with his front knuckle, which is going to pinpoint a more specific target. And it definitely hits the lats here, which is really not going to cause much damage at all. And then the very last one is this other right hook from Islam Makhachev. Again, just like before, he's swinging his arm around and it lands to the back of the head of Volkanovski yet again, actually more to like the left corner of his head if you want to be very specific about it. This is just a light strike that lands. A few people are trying to say that this is not a strike, this doesn't land, when it clearly does. You don't need to land with your fist in order to make the strike count. And that's ultimately it. So there are a couple things I did learn from the Guru video that I correct myself on. There are still many things, most things that I disagree with. The light and medium switch ups and stuff is just so irrelevant to talk about, to be honest. It's not swaying the results, it's not swaying the decision or anything like that. And if you want to argue for a medium or a light, if you want to switch up a lot of these, I could definitely agree with those. The only thing I thought was kind of a low blow was like trying to say that I was purposely missing things to make it look like Islam won, when if you actually look at the fight, there are many times where it even looks like Islam landed on Volkanovski, and I did not count those. That is not the case at all. I said things for Volkanovski, went against Volkanovski. I mean, I pretty much had like multiple week-long debates defending Volkanovski against Max Holloway. And even debating that he's the best fighter in the world, I still believe he is the best fighter, not in the world, that I have ever seen before. I said this on multiple podcasts as well. I never spoke for Islam Makhachev as highly as I did for Volk. And even still, the whole pound for pound thing is so confusing to me at this point because I don't really know what definition people are going with. The original definition is Volkanovski's #1 pound for pound, 100%. But with the rewriting of the definition that people are trying to do, it gets so confusing. I don't really know what to go for. But hopefully I did address things. I'm pretty sure Guru is going to talk about the 4th round and stuff. I don't know if we're going to be able to agree on that. I know he's going to be talking about the punches and maybe it did create some blemishes on Islam's face and stuff like that. But with the whole dominant position thing and the couple of shots that Islam landed on his feet, as well as a takedown, and he did kind of attempt rear naked chokes, I find it pretty hard for those punches to trump all of that. But no hard feelings for anybody, no hard feelings for MMA Guru or anybody who disagrees. This is ultimately the fun of the sport. Discussing these kind of things is what makes it fun, but when it goes to more of like slander and stuff like that, that takes away the sport. That takes the fun, the enjoyment out of it and everything.